Throughout this video, we are going to be talking about statistics, the definition of it, and specifically how to generate a valid statistical analysis. So the definition of statistics is really just the study of data. More specifically, how to collect data, analyze it, summarize it, and present it so that we can make some kind of conclusion about a group of people or really anything. So over here in this image, it looks like we're looking at the height of a river or a pond on different days. So the height, could go down on certain days, or maybe it rains, so the height goes up. But really, we're collecting data, analyzing and summarizing it by finding the average, the minimums, and the maximums, and presenting it in a way that tells us something about this river or this pond. Now, if we take a look at this picture here, it says that 90% of people have only taken photos on a camera phone versus a regular camera. Some of you guys may look at this picture and just accept it and just believe that that's a true statement. But some of you, like me, may question it and may think, is this really accurate? And the main question to ask here is, who did they survey? Who is this 90% of people that have taken these photos versus the 10% that haven't? And this comes down to something called population versus sampling. Because the population is people, all people. Is that in the whole world? Is that just in the United States? Who are these people? And who are the set of people that they surveyed to get this conclusion? So that's what we're going to talk about next. So let's take a look at some of these definitions. I already kind of defined statistics for you. I briefly talked about population, and what a population is an entire group of people or objects in which you want to gather information. So let's say you wanted to conduct a survey on all of the middle school students in Liberty Benton. That would be your population. Or your population could be just, the football team, or all of the teachers at Liberty Benton. That would be your population. If you wanted to conduct a survey on an entire population, it might be a little bit large, and that can make it difficult to analyze and to get all of the information from an entire population. So it might make more sense to gather a sample. And a sample is a smaller subset of the population in which you want to use in a study. This is going to be very helpful when you conduct a survey because, again, let's say your population is the entire middle school at Liberty Benton. It would be hard to gather information about all 300 plus students at Liberty Benton. So it might make more sense to get a sample of, 50 students. So here are some examples of population versus sample. So a population would be all of the books in the library. A sample would be just 20 books from the library. Population, like I said, could be all of the 7th grade students at Liberty Benton Middle School. A smaller sample would just be the students that are in my homeroom. The population of quarters would be all of the quarters that are in circulation throughout the country. A smaller sample of that would be just 150 quarters from a bank. But when we conduct a survey, if we want our results to be valid, then we have to make sure we pick a good sample. And a valid sample needs to be representative of the population. Everyone needs to have an equal chance of being chosen. Our sample needs to be random or unbiased. And it also needs to be large enough to provide accurate data. So let's look at some examples. Let's say we want to estimate the number of high school students who ride the bus to and from school. These are 3 options of samples that we could pick, but let's see which one would give us the most valid results. First off, if you pick 50 students that you pass in the hallway, I would say that's a pretty good random sample. If you picked 30 or 50 seniors at random, that would not be a very valid result because they're all seniors, and typically seniors have their license and are able to drive to school. 50 students during lunch, I would also say, is a pretty good random sample, assuming that all grade levels are represented at lunch and it's not just a freshman lunch and then a sophomore lunch. If you pick 50 students during lunch and all grade levels are there, then I would say that's a good random sample. Let's look at a few more examples and see whether the sampling method would be good and valid. First, if we want to know how the residents of your town feel about building a new baseball stadium and you randomly survey 100 people entering the stadium, do you think that would be valid or not? I would say that that is probably not valid because if you're going into the stadium, if you're entering the stadium, then those are the people that probably want a new baseball stadium because they would benefit from it because they are more likely to be there. If you want to estimate the number of books students in your school read over the summer, you assign each student a number, and using a random number generator, you select 30 students to survey. I definitely think that would be a valid random sample. Each student has a chance to be selected, and it's very random because you're using a generator. You want to estimate the number of students in your school who play a musical instrument. You survey the first 20 students that walk into band class. Hopefully you realize that that is definitely not going to produce valid results. All of the students that you're surveying are walking into band class, so 100% of them are probably going to play a musical instrument, which we know is not the case. Matt wants to survey his classmates' favorite sneaker brand. He surveys 10 of his friends by recording the branded shoes they were wearing that day. What throws this one off is 10 of his friends. Okay, if he wants to survey all of his classmates, if his population is classmates, then all of his classmates should have a chance of being selected. Matt only chose 10 of his friends, which is not very random, and it probably has some bias since they're all friends and probably have similar interests. And lastly, you want to know whether or not citizens of your town are voting for or against the school levy. You ask 2 random people as they are walking out of the grocery store, and one was for and one was against. So you just say the town is split 50-50. Hopefully you notice that this one, the 2 is what is throwing this off. 2 is not a large enough sample. You would need to survey more people to get a valid response. The last thing I want us to be able to do is come up with good ways and bad ways to select a sample. So let's say we want to survey 7th grade students, so that's our population, and find out their favorite colors. So how could we pick a good sample of 7th grade students and a bad sample of 7th grade students? I would say a bad way would be just picking your friends or only surveying 5 people. Even if you send out a mass email to everybody and collect the responses of people that respond, I would say that might even have a little bit of bias to it because people that are checking their emails and responding versus the people that don't may have an effect on their favorite color. I know that sounds silly, but it's not completely random. A good way, and a really random, unbiased way that I can think of, is to randomly number all of the students in your grade put their names into a random name generator. That way everyone has a chance of being selected. Select a good number of students, maybe 20 to 30, and ask those students. So next time you see or read a statistic, maybe just don't take it at face value. Question how the sample was collected. Was it random? Was it unbiased? And are the results of this survey really valid?